Chapter 1. The Binder. Iris Pello had a plan. She had, in fact, a binder. The binder had tabs. The tabs were color-coded: green for logistics, blue for speeches, yellow for decorations, and a single red tab at the back labeled Contingencies, which contained 3 pages of notes covering scenarios ranging from dietary restrictions not communicated in advance to weather event requiring indoor overflow seating. Nowhere in the red tab, not on any of the 3 pages, not in the margins, not in the small handwriting she used when she was being thorough, had Iris written the words, 300 mothers use the feast as a platform for the collective public prosecution of their children. That contingency had not occurred to her. It should have. She could see that now. But at the time of planning, 6 weeks ago, sitting at her desk with a cup of tea and a genuine desire to do something nice for the pack, the idea had seemed simple: a Mother's Day feast. The Black Pine Pack had no formal tradition for it. Other packs did. Human society did. It was a gap in their calendar. And Iris, who had been queen for 2 years and was still finding gaps, decided to fill it. She had drafted the invitation herself. Cream cardstock, gold lettering. You are warmly invited to the first annual Black Pine Mother's Day Feast, hosted by Queen Iris Pello, in honor of every mother in the territory. She'd included an RSVP card. She'd included a menu. She'd included a note about parking. 312 women had RSVP'd yes. Iris had been delighted. She should have been suspicious. 312? That was every mother in the territory. Every single one. Pack mothers, retired alphas' wives, widowed mothers, single mothers, mothers of pups still in the nursery, mothers whose children held rank, and mothers whose children did not, mothers who had not attended a formal pack event in 15 years. All of them. Yes. 100% response rate. No event in the history of the Black Pine Pack had ever achieved a 100% response rate. The annual solstice hunt averaged 70%. The king's own coronation had managed 86%. Iris had attributed it to enthusiasm. She had told Henrik, "The mothers are excited." Henrik had looked at the RSVP numbers and said, "That's a lot of mothers." Iris had said, "It's going to be beautiful." Henrik had said, He had looked at the numbers again. He had said nothing further. She should have listened to the nothing. The great hall looked perfect. Iris stood at the entrance at 6:45, 15 minutes before the doors were scheduled to open, and consulted her binder. Flowers, done. 32 centerpieces of white peonies and wild lavender from the eastern meadow, arranged by a team of 4 pack members she had personally trained in centerpiece construction over 2 Wednesday afternoons. Tables, done. 40 round tables, 8 seats each, seating chart organized by family cluster with buffer tables between any mothers she had identified as having a long-standing interpersonal conflict. There were 6 buffer tables. She was proud of that. She had done research. Candles, lit. Banners, hung. The one that read, "Happy Mother's Day, with love from Black Pine," was straight. She had checked it with a level. An actual level. Henrik had watched her check it with a level and had said nothing, which was the correct response. Menu. Confirmed with Odette, the head cook that morning. Roast venison, herb-crusted salmon, 3 salad options, fresh bread in 4 varieties, a dessert table with 7 selections, and a cake large enough to serve 300 that read, in elegant script, "To the mothers who built this pack." Speeches, 3. First, Iris, a welcome and a thank you. 4 minutes, rehearsed. Second, Henrik, brief remarks about the importance of mothers to pack strength. 2 minutes, also rehearsed, though Henrik had delivered his rehearsal in a tone that suggested he was reading terms and conditions aloud, and Iris had made him do it again. Third, and this was the part Iris was most excited about, a toast from the senior pack mother. She had asked Mrs. Crook, 80 years old, 4 decades as a pack mother, respected by everyone. A woman of gravitas and warmth who would, Iris was certain, deliver exactly the kind of speech that would make the room cry in the right way. The binder said 7 p.m., doors open. 7:20, first course. 7:45, Iris's speech. 7:55, Henrik's speech. 8:05, Mrs. Crook's toast. 8:15, dessert. 9, gifts distributed. 9:30, close. It was the last time the binder would be accurate about anything. The doors opened at 7. The mothers arrived in a wave, not a trickle, a wave. 312 women entered the Great Hall in under 9 minutes, which Iris noted was significantly faster than the predicted 20-minute arrival window she had built into the schedule. They came in groups. They came in pairs. They came alone with the focused energy of women who had cleared their evening and were not going to waste a minute of it. They looked wonderful. They had dressed up. Not formally, practically. Comfortable shoes, good earrings. The kind of outfit that said, "I am here to enjoy myself, and I have no intention of leaving early." The scent of the room changed the moment they entered. 300 wolves carried 300 distinct base scents, and the combination should have been overwhelming. But pack mothers carried a particular note underneath everything else, something warm and settled, like a room that has been lived in for decades. Iris breathed it in and felt her own wolf settle deeper into her bones. Safe. That's what 300 mothers smelled like. Safe, and faintly like they had opinions. The seating chart held for approximately 11 minutes. Iris watched from the head table as mothers reviewed their assigned seats, considered them, and then moved to wherever they actually wanted to sit. The buffer tables, her careful conflict prevention measure, were absorbed into the general migration. Mrs. Hensley, who had not spoken to Mrs. Garrick in 6 years over a disputed property line, sat down directly beside Mrs. Garrick. Iris tensed. The two women began talking immediately and with apparent warmth. Iris did not know what to do with this information. By 7:15, the hall was full, the seating chart was theoretical, and the noise level had exceeded anything Iris had planned for. She looked at her binder. She looked at the room. She made a note in the margin, seating chart non-binding, revise approach for next year. Something in her, the part that was not the binder, not the tabs, not the color-coded contingencies, was entirely unbothered. While Iris the planner was recalculating, the deeper layer of her mind was doing something else entirely. It was watching 300 wolves settle into a room together, and it was registering that the settling was good, correct. The way a territory smells right after rain. Nothing to fix, nothing to track. Just a room full of pack doing what pack does. Iris's hands were making notes. The rest of her was perfectly still and perfectly content in a way that had nothing to do with the schedule. She did not yet know there would be a next year. She did not yet know what was coming. She was still operating under the assumption that this was a feast. Chapter 2. The Last Good Hour. The first course went well. The bread was fresh and good. The venison was perfect. Odette had outdone herself. Iris made a note to tell her so later. The wine was flowing at the rate she had predicted, which was one of the last predictions she would get right that evening. The mothers ate with the specific pleasure of women who had not cooked the meal themselves and were not going to clean up afterward. Henrik sat beside her at the head table. He was wearing his formal jacket, the dark one with the silver threading at the collar, and he looked handsome and slightly uncomfortable, which was how Henrik looked at most social events. He ate his venison, he drank his wine. He surveyed the room with the calm assessment of a king who believes the evening is proceeding normally. "This is going well," he said. "It is," Iris said. "The mothers seem happy." "They do." "Your mother is here," Henrik said, nodding toward a table near the center of the room where Iris's mother was holding court over a breadbasket. She looks like she's enjoying the bread. My mother is always enjoying bread. Mine hasn't arrived yet. Iris checked the room. He was right. Marta Pello's seat, carefully chosen, prominent but not head table, with a clear sightline to her son, was empty. Iris felt a small flicker of something she couldn't name. Marta was never late. Marta had been queen before Iris. Marta understood events. "She'll be here," Iris said. "I'm not worried," Henrik said. He should have been worried. At 7:43, 2 minutes ahead of schedule, because Iris believed in running ahead of schedule, she stood to give her speech. The room quieted. 312 faces turned toward her. Iris felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. 300 wolves focusing on a single point. She could feel her own wolf cataloging the room. Exits, sightlines, the specific quality of attention in each section. The mothers near the back were leaning forward. The mothers at the center tables had turned their chairs. Iris smiled. She opened her binder to the speech tab. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she said. "When I planned this feast, I wanted to honor something that I think we've overlooked for too long. Every woman in this room has given something to this pack that no title and no rank can capture. You raised the wolves who protect us. You raised the wolves who feed us, who build our homes, who guard our borders. You did it without formal recognition, without ceremony, and, I suspect, without enough help. Laughter, warm, knowing laughter. The kind that comes from a room full of women who have a shared experience. Tonight is for you," Iris said. "Not for your sons, not for the pack's agenda, not for politics. For you. So eat, drink, and know that you are seen." She sat down. The applause was generous and genuine. Iris checked the binder. 7:47, 2 minutes over. Acceptable. She glanced at Henrik. He was looking at the door. Marta Pello had arrived. Henrik's mother stood in the entrance of the great hall wearing a deep burgundy dress, her silver hair pinned up, her posture the kind of straight that communicated not elegance but preparation. She was holding a small clutch purse. She surveyed the room the way her son surveyed rooms, with the calm, systematic assessment of someone identifying all relevant information before proceeding. Iris felt something shift in the air. It was subtle, a tightening at the edges, a change in the room's scent that was so faint most humans would have missed it. But Iris wasn't most humans. She was a wolf. And what she smelled, underneath the wine and the venison and the 300 base scents, was something she could only describe as preparation. Not Marta's preparation. Everyone's. Chapter 3. The Toast. Henrik stood to give his speech. It was supposed to be 2 minutes. He had rehearsed it. It was about the strength of pack mothers and the gratitude of the pack. It was fine. It was exactly what a king should say at an event like this. It was sincere and appropriate, and it lasted 2 minutes and 14 seconds, and the applause was polite. Iris checked the binder. 8:02, 3 minutes ahead of schedule. She felt a pulse of satisfaction. Mrs. Crook's toast was next, then dessert, then gifts, then home. She had done it. A beautiful, smooth, well-organized. Mrs. Crook stood up. Iris had given Mrs. Crook no specific instructions for her toast beyond a few words of wisdom from a senior mother. She had trusted Mrs. Crook's judgment. Mrs. Crook was 80 years old. She had raised 3 children. She had buried a mate. She had served the pack for 6 decades. She was, by any measure, a woman of grace and restraint. Mrs. Crook picked up her wine glass. She took a sip. She set it down. She looked at the room with the serene, unhurried patience of a woman who has been waiting for this moment and is going to enjoy every second of it. "Thank you, Queen Iris," Mrs. Crook said. "What a lovely idea this was. A night for mothers." She paused. The room waited. "I'd like to direct my first remark to my son." Mrs. Crook turned and looked across the hall at Bram Crook, beta of the Black Pine Pack. Bram was a large man. He ran the daily operations of 300 wolves. He was calm under pressure. He was competent. He was respected. He was also, Iris realized with sudden clarity, turning a shade of pink that she had not previously seen on a grown man's face. "Bram," Mrs. Crook said, "my boy." Bram's shoulders shifted. It was subtle, a millimeter drop, a slight forward tilt of the head. At the tables around him, Iris saw other wolves register it. The beta's body had done something involuntary, something deeper than embarrassment. The wolf in him, the part that tracked pack dynamics the way other people tracked weather, had recognized an authority older than his rank. His mother's. "You have not visited me," Mrs. Crook said, "in 5 weeks." The room was silent. 5 weeks. I have counted. I have a calendar on the wall in my kitchen. I have been making small marks on it. Would you like to know how many marks there are, Bram? Mother. 35 marks, Mrs. Crook said. I also wrote your name next to each one, in case I forgot who wasn't visiting. I have not forgotten. A sound rippled through the hall. Not laughter, not yet. Something between recognition and horror. Every son and daughter in the room had just done involuntary math about their own visiting schedule. You live, Mrs. Crook continued, 14 minutes from my house. I know this because I have walked it. At my age. With my knees. 14 minutes, Bram. Not 14 hours. Not across a mountain. 14 minutes through the East Woods. And yet I have seen the postman more often than I have seen my own son. Bram was now the color of the burgundy dress Henrik's mother was wearing. His wolf, Iris could tell, was doing something complicated. The big man's hands were flat on the table, pressing down, as if anchoring himself against the urge to move toward his mother. His head had dropped another degree. At the surrounding tables, younger wolves were going very, very still, the way pack members did when a dominant energy shifted and they weren't sure where it would land. You send messages, Mrs. Crook said. I will grant you that. You are a reliable sender of messages. Busy this week, Mum. Pack business, Mum. Will come Sunday, Mum. You have told me you will come Sunday 9 times since February. You have come Sunday twice. I have also tracked this on the calendar. I have a very thorough calendar. Someone at a nearby table made a sound that was trying very hard not to be a laugh. I am 80 years old, Mrs. Crook said. I have limited Sundays remaining. I would like to spend some of them with my son. This does not seem to me an unreasonable request. She picked up her wine glass. She took another sip. She set it down. That is my toast. Thank you. She sat down. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then the room exhaled, a collective held breath release that Iris felt in her chest. She looked at her binder. Under 8:05 she had written, Mrs. Crook toast, wisdom and warmth, 3 to 5 minutes. She crossed it out. In the margin she wrote, prosecution, 4 minutes, effective. And the part of her that was not the binder, the part that had been still and content all evening, was doing something Iris did not expect. It was not alarmed. It was not scrambling. It was watching an 80-year-old woman hold an entire hall accountable. And it was satisfied. Deep bone satisfied. The way you feel when a hunt goes exactly right, when the pack moves together without a signal. This was correct. This was how pack worked. A mother had stood, and her son's wolf had submitted, and the order of things had been briefly, beautifully restored to something older than rank. Iris the planner was looking at a destroyed schedule. The rest of Iris was watching the pack heal, and didn't care about the schedule at all. She should have closed the binder there. She should have stood up, thanked Mrs. Crook, and moved the evening to dessert. That was the plan. That was what the green tab said. She did not stand up. Because someone else did. Chapter 4. The Tribunal. It was the cook's mother, Odette's mother, a compact, sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Varga, rose from her seat at table 14. She did not ask for the room's attention. She simply stood, and the room gave it to her, because the room was beginning to understand what kind of evening this was. "I would also like to say something," Mrs. Varga said. Iris looked at her binder. There was nothing in the binder about Mrs. Varga. Mrs. Varga was not on the program. Iris turned to the Contingencies tab. Under Unscheduled Speaker, she had written, "Politely redirect to post-dinner conversation." She looked at Mrs. Varga's face. She looked back at the note. She decided the note was not going to be useful. "Odette," Mrs. Varga said, looking at her daughter, who was standing in the doorway to the kitchen in her cook's apron, holding a ladle. "Your bread has too much salt." Odette stared at her mother. "It has had too much salt since March. I have eaten it every Sunday because I do visit my mother, unlike some people in this room," a glance at Bram, who sank lower. "And every Sunday I have thought, this bread has too much salt. But I did not say anything because you are sensitive about the bread." "I'm not sensitive about the bread," Odette said. "You are very sensitive about the bread. You get it from your father. He was also sensitive about bread. But I have decided that tonight is for honesty, because Mrs. Crook has shown us the way. And so I am telling you, the bread has too much salt. Reduce it by a quarter measure. Your rosemary focaccia, however, is perfect. Never change the focaccia." Mrs. Varga sat down. Iris wrote in her binder, 8:12 p.m., second unscheduled critique, bread-related. The room stirred. Something was happening. Iris could feel it in the way the scent of the room was shifting, layers of anticipation rising over the warmth of the food. The mothers were sitting straighter. They were looking at each other with the specific, recognizing glances of people who have just realized they have been given permission. Permission to speak. A woman at table 9 stood up. "While we're doing this," she said, "I'd like to address my son Harlan. Harlan, I know you can hear me." Harlan, head of the King's Guard, was sitting at a table near the wall. He was a career soldier. He had maintained his composure through border skirmishes, rogue wolf incursions, and one memorable incident involving a territorial dispute and a collapsed bridge. He was not maintaining his composure now. His ears, human ears, but still, were red. "You have not answered my last 3 letters," his mother said. 3. I write them by hand, Harlan, by hand, with a pen, on paper, because you told me 2 years ago that you preferred letters to phone calls because they were more personal. So I write you personal letters, and you do not answer them. I've been busy. Yes, you are always busy. You are the busiest man in the territory. No one in the history of this pack has ever been as busy as Harlan. And yet I notice you have time to attend every single one of Henrik's council meetings and every single training session. And I saw you last Tuesday at the market buying apples, Harlan. Apples. You had time for apples, but not for a letter to your mother." At this point, something remarkable happened across the hall. Iris watched it unfold with the fascinated attention of a woman whose event had gone so far off script that the script was no longer a relevant document. The children in the room, not all of them, but enough, began to physically respond. Not voluntarily, not consciously. The wolf in each of them was reacting to the authority in the room, and the authority in the room was no longer Henrik's. It was theirs, the mother's. One by one, Iris saw shoulders drop, heads lower, eyes turned downward. Not shame, something older than shame, something wolf. The part of every grown wolf that remembered, at a level deeper than thought, who had raised them, who had been the first authority, who had been the warmth and the discipline and the safety before rank, before pack structure, before any of it. The mothers outranked everyone in this room, and every wolf in it knew it. 7 more mothers stood up. Iris stopped trying to track the binder after the 4th one. She set it down on the table and simply watched. Henrik was watching too, though with a different expression. The expression of a man doing rapid calculations about whether this event could be managed and arriving repeatedly at the answer no. The seventh mother, Mrs. Calloway, whose son worked in the stables, delivered a 3-minute speech about her son's failure to return a baking dish she had lent him in January. "It is May," she said. "It is May, and my baking dish is in your kitchen, and every time I bake I have to use the smaller one, and the smaller one does not fit a proper roast. You know this. I have told you this. Return my dish, Raymond." Raymond, who was 6'4" and had once faced down a feral wolf without flinching, said, "Yes, Mum." He said it very quietly. A ninth mother stood up, and this time she was not looking at a son. She was looking at her daughter, a young woman seated 2 tables away who had gone very still. "Elise," she said, "you moved to the South Quarter in October. It is now May. You have visited me 3 times. 3. Your brother visits every week, and he lives further away. I am not comparing, but I am comparing." Elise, who had apparently believed she was safe because the tribunal was for sons, looked like a woman who had just realized the scope of the event was broader than anticipated. "Mum, I call you," she said. "You call me on Tuesdays for 11 minutes. I have timed it. 11 minutes, Elise. I cannot even tell you about the garden in 11 minutes. The tomatoes alone take 7. Elise put her face in her hands. At the surrounding tables, several daughters who had been watching the son's humiliation with comfortable detachment suddenly recalculated their own positions. The 10th mother stood up. She looked at no one in particular. "I just want to say," she said, "that my son is fine. He visits, he calls. He brought me flowers last week. I just wanted everyone to know that not all children in this pack are disappointments." Her son, sitting 3 tables away, put his face in his hands. The wolves around him patted his back. He had won, and the winning was almost worse than losing. But then something happened that Iris had not expected from this particular evening. An 11th mother stood up, an older woman near the back with reading glasses pushed up on her head, and she was not looking at the room with grievance. She was looking at her daughter, a young woman sitting beside her, and she was holding a small piece of paper. "I also keep records," she said. The room, which had been bracing for another prosecution, went quiet. "Mrs. Crook has her calendar. I have my list." She unfolded the paper. "My daughter Lena moved back to the territory 2 years ago when I got sick. I have written down what she has done since then because I did not want to forget any of it." She looked at the paper. "She moved into the spare room on a Tuesday. She stayed 4 months. She cooked for me every Wednesday. She fixed the garden gate that had been broken since her father died, and she did not mention her father while she fixed it because she knew I would cry. She sat with me through 11 bad nights, and on the 12th she fell asleep in the chair beside my bed, and I did not wake her because it was the first time in 2 years I was not afraid to be alone in the house." The room was very still. "She calls me every evening," Lena's mother continued, consulting her list. "The calls are not 11 minutes. A glance at Elise's mother, who conceded the point with a nod. "They are between 20 and 45 minutes. I have also timed them. She asks about the tomatoes. She remembers the tomatoes." Another glance at Elise's mother, who looked at Elise, who sank lower. "I do not have a grievance," Lena's mother said. She folded the paper. "I have a daughter. I wanted the room to know what the other side of the ledger looks like." Lena, sitting beside her mother, pressed her lips together. Her chin trembled once. She breathed through it, exhaled, and put her hand on her mother's arm. Her mother covered it with her own and held it there. Neither of them moved. Neither of them needed to. At the table nearest to them, a large man who had been publicly prosecuted 20 minutes earlier looked at Lena and her mother, looked at his own hands, and then quietly pushed his chair back and left the hall. He came back 6 minutes later with a jar of his mother's favorite honey from his kitchen. He set it on her table without a word. His mother looked at the honey. She looked at her son. She unscrewed the lid and smelled it because it was the kind she liked, and he had remembered. Across the room, a daughter who had not been called out, who had been visiting, who had been calling, who had been doing the quiet work that no one stands up to announce, reached under the table and squeezed her mother's hand. Her mother squeezed back without looking, the way you do with someone whose hand you know by feel. Iris looked at her binder. In the margin she wrote, "Both sides of the ledger." The room had found its rhythm now. It was not chaos. Iris could see that clearly. It was something else. Mrs. Crook had set the template. Name it, date it, quantify it, make it personal but precise. Some mothers used that template for prosecution. Lena's mother used it for testimony. Both were devastating. Both worked. She looked down at her binder. In the margin of the contingencies tab, she wrote, "I did not create this. I uncorked it." Chapter 5. The Former Queen. And then Marta Pello stood up. The room went quiet. Not gradually, immediately. The way a room goes quiet when a wolf of serious rank chooses to speak. Marta was not queen anymore, but she had been, and the pack remembered. More than that, every wolf in the hall could feel the shift. The air pressure changed. The background hum of 300 heartbeats seemed to synchronize for a moment and then settle into waiting. This was not a mother addressing her son. This was a former queen addressing the current king. The pack's attention sharpened to a point. Henrik sat very still beside Iris. She could feel the change in him, not visible, not yet, but present in the way his breathing had altered and his hands had gone flat on the table. The same gesture Bram had made, the same instinct. "Henrik," Marta said, her voice carried without effort. She did not raise it. She was a woman who had never needed to raise her voice in her life. "My son." Henrik's jaw tightened. Iris was close enough to see the muscle work. She was also close enough to feel something else, something she had never quite felt from Henrik before. A low, involuntary hum of energy that was not embarrassment, not anger, not defiance. It was his wolf. And his wolf was not doing what she expected. His wolf was trying to get up. Not to leave, to go to her. The instinct was immediate and total. She could see it in the way his weight shifted forward, the way his right hand left the table for a moment before he pressed it back down. His wolf had registered his mother's emotional state before Marta had said anything beyond his name, and it had already decided what to do. Go to her, press close, fix it, bring something. The impulse was absurd and specific. Bring her something, bring her the bread, bring her the wine, bring her anything. Just go to her and bring something, and put your head down and stay there until she isn't upset anymore. Henrik's hands pressed flat on the table. The king of the Black Pine Pack was fighting an overwhelming instinct to trot across a banquet hall and lay a bread roll at his mother's feet. He stayed in his chair. Barely. "You have not visited me in 6 weeks, Marta said. Henrik opened his mouth. "Mother, I have not asked you a question," Marta said. "I am making a statement. You have not visited me in 6 weeks. I live in the cottage at the edge of the North Wood. The cottage you chose for me when I stepped down. It is a lovely cottage. I enjoy it. I enjoy the garden. I enjoy the quiet. I do not enjoy the amount of quiet. There is too much quiet, Henrik. Do you know why?" Henrik did not answer, because she had just told him she was not asking questions. "Because my son, the king, has not visited." The room was so silent that Iris could hear the candles. 300 wolves, breathing and not moving. 6 weeks, Marta continued. I understand that you are busy. You are the king. You have responsibilities. You have meetings. You have a territory to manage and a pack to lead and a mate who is, I will say, doing a much better job of staying in touch than you are." She glanced at Iris, a small, warm glance. Then back to Henrik. "But I am your mother. I am not a meeting you can reschedule. I am not a report you will get to when you have time. I am an 83-year-old woman who would like to see her son." Henrik's left hand was gripping the edge of the table, not in anger, in restraint. His wolf was pulling at him again, not with words, not with arguments, but with the blunt, wordless urgency of an animal that knows it did something wrong and cannot sit still with that knowledge. Go. Head down. Stay. The impulse to whine was there, physically there, in his throat, and Iris watched him swallow it. The most powerful wolf in the territory was suppressing the urge to whine like a scolded pup in front of his entire pack. His right hand moved toward the breadbasket. Iris watched it happen. He wasn't reaching for bread to eat. He was reaching for bread to bring to her. The wolf didn't have a strategy. The wolf didn't understand politics or scheduling or the demands of running a territory. The wolf understood. She is upset. Go to her. Bring something. Put your head against her hand. Stay until it's fixed. Henrik caught his own hand halfway to the basket and put it back on the table. The bread roll he'd been reaching for sat there, oblivious to its near conscription as a peace offering. His wolf did not understand why he was sitting. His wolf had done the calculation on 6 weeks, and the calculation had come back unacceptable, and now every instinct in his body was telling him to go to his mother, and he was sitting in a chair at a head table trying to be a king about it. He half rose, sat back down. The room noticed. "I have," Marta said, and here her voice did something subtle. It did not crack, but it thinned just slightly at the edges. "Kept myself company. I have the garden. I have my books. Mrs. Tully comes on Wednesdays for tea. Your sister calls, your sister, Henrik, who lives 4 hours away. She calls more than you visit, and she has 3 children under 5. Henrik half rose again, sat down again. His hand twitched toward the breadbasket a second time. 300 wolves watched him do it. The beta, who had already been through his own public reckoning, looked at Henrik with an expression of profound, wordless solidarity. Iris, sitting close enough to feel the tension radiating off him like heat, felt something strange. The deep, settled part of her, the part that had been content all evening while her binder burned, was watching Henrik's wolf try to drag him across the room to his mother, and it was thinking, "Good, let it." "I am not asking for much," Marta said. "I am asking for my son, once a week, for an hour, with tea." She sat down. The silence held for 6 full seconds. 6 seconds in a room of 300 wolves is an eternity. Iris counted them against her own heartbeat, which was elevated, which was not something she had planned for in the binder. Henrik stood up, not the half-rise this time. He stood fully. He looked at Iris, a brief look, not asking for permission, but something else, something closer to, "I need you to know I'm about to do this." And then he walked around the head table, down the 3 steps to the main floor, and across the hall to his mother's table. The wolf had won. Iris could see it in every line of him, the tension that had been holding him in his chair, the king tension, the dignity tension, the public composure tension, was gone. What was left was the thing underneath. A son crossing a room to his mother because every instinct in his body had been telling him to do it for 20 minutes, and he had finally stopped arguing. The pack watched him. Every head turned. Every wolf tracked his movement, not because he was the king, though he was, but because something about the way he moved had changed. He was not walking like a king. He was not walking like an alpha. He was walking like a son, and every wolf in the room could feel the difference in the way his energy had shifted from authority to something raw and unguarded, and deeply, specifically, his. He reached his mother's table. He looked at her for a moment. Marta looked back at him with an expression that contained the entire, complicated architecture of a mother who is angry and hurt and proud and loving, and not finished being angry yet, but willing to see what he does next. Henrik knelt. The alpha king of the Black Pine Pack knelt beside his mother's chair in front of 300 pack members and put his hand on her arm and said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have come." Marta looked at her son. Her hand came up, slowly, the way a gesture comes when it's been waiting, and rested on the back of his head. She held it there. "Yes," she said, "you should have. I'll come Sunday. You'll come Sunday. Every Sunday." "We'll see," Marta said. But her hand was still on his head, and her face had done the thing that faces do when the anger has said its piece and the love underneath it can finally breathe. Iris was not crying. She was making a note. The note said, 8:47 p.m., the king knelt. I am going to need a bigger binder. Chapter 6. What the Pack Built. The room held still for another moment. Then someone, Iris never identified who, started it. Bram Crook stood up. He stood up the way a large man stands up when he has made a decision, and the decision involves crossing a room, and the room is watching. He pushed his chair back. He crossed the hall to his mother's table, 14 minutes from her house, she had said, and it took him about 14 seconds to reach her now. Mrs. Crook looked up at her son, who was twice her size, and running the operations of the largest pack in the territory, and who was, at this moment, visibly trying not to cry. "Mom," he said, "I'm sorry. I'll come this Sunday, and next Sunday, and every Sunday you want." Mrs. Crook's face did something extraordinary. For 10 minutes she had been precise and devastating and funny. She had been the woman who keeps a calendar of her son's absences and reports the data with statistical rigor. And now Bram was standing in front of her, and Mrs. Crook, 80 years old, 4'11", a woman who had just publicly dismantled the beta in front of the entire pack, could not speak. She reached for his hand. It was a small gesture. Her hand was small, and his was enormous, and she just reached for it, and Bram took it, and Mrs. Crook held her son's hand and pressed it against her cheek, and said nothing. Her mouth worked once, twice. Nothing came out. The words were done. The speech was done. The data and the calendar marks and the 35 small notations were done. What was left was an 80-year-old woman holding her son's hand. The room broke. Not loudly, not in a wave. It broke the way things break when the thing holding them together was thinner than anyone realized. One mother at table 6 put her hand over her mouth. A woman at table 12 was already crying. 3 sons and a daughter stood up simultaneously from 4 different tables and started walking toward their mothers. And then more stood. And then it was happening everywhere. Children crossing the hall, mothers reaching for them. The distance between grievance and forgiveness, turning out to be about 4 steps and a hand extended. Iris sat at the head table and watched it happen, and the part of her that kept the binder had gone completely quiet. The other part, the part that had been content from the moment 300 mothers walked through the door, the part that had known before she did that this was correct, was wider awake than it had been all night. This was Pack, not the version in her planning documents, not the version with seating charts and timed toasts and contingency tabs. The real version. Messy, loud, weeping, accountable, alive. Her wolf had never cared about the binder. Her wolf had been waiting for this. Odette came out of the kitchen, still in her apron, still holding the ladle, and walked to her mother's table. Mrs. Varga looked at her daughter and said, "The bread is still too salty." Odette hugged her. Mrs. Varga hugged back and whispered, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, But you are a good cook. You are a very good cook. I should have said that first. Harlan was at his mother's table with 3 sheets of paper. I wrote you back, he said. I wrote all 3. I didn't send them. I didn't think they were good enough. His mother took the letters. She unfolded the first one. She read the opening line. She looked at Harlan and said, "You absolute fool. These are wonderful. Sit down and read me the rest." Raymond Calloway had brought the baking dish. He had left the feast, walked to his house, retrieved the baking dish, and returned. He set it on the table in front of his mother with the solemnity of a man returning a sacred artifact. "It's been washed," he said. "I would hope so," Mrs. Calloway said. "It's been in your kitchen since January." The younger generation watched all of this from the edges of the hall with the specific, wide-eyed confusion of wolves who had just learned something about their elders that no one had told them was coming. A 16-year-old named Petra, sitting at a table near the back with 4 other teenagers, turned to her friend and said, "Is this what pack events are always like?" "I don't think so," her friend said. "Because if it is, I'm going to start visiting my mom more." "Your mom is at this feast." "I know. I can see her from here. She's looking at me." "What's she doing?" "Writing something down." "Oh no." "Yeah. Is it a calendar?" "I think it might be a calendar." The feast ended at midnight, not because Iris ended it. Iris had lost control of the schedule at approximately 8:07 p.m. and had never recovered it. It ended because the mothers were satisfied. They had said what they came to say. They had heard what they needed to hear. They had eaten well and they had cried and they had held their children's hands and they had, collectively, accomplished in one evening what years of private frustration had not managed. They left clutching gifts, small wrapped packages Iris had prepared, one for each mother, containing a candle, a handwritten note, and a packet of lavender from the eastern meadow. They left in groups, in pairs, alone, with the settled energy of women who have finally said the thing. Iris stood at the door and watched them go. Her binder was on the head table, abandoned, open to a page that was more margin notes than plan. Henrik stood beside her, his formal jacket slightly rumpled from kneeling on the floor, his expression that of a man who has survived something and is not entirely sure what. The hall was almost empty, candles guttering, centerpieces wilted, dessert table demolished. The cake, to the mothers who built this pack, had been reduced to crumbs and a smear of frosting that read, "Thurs who boo." "Well," Henrik said. "Well," Iris said. "That was not what you planned." "No." "You planned a feast." "I did." "What you created," Henrik said, with the careful precision of a man choosing his words, "was a tribunal." "Yes, a public tribunal, in which every child in this pack was individually prosecuted by their own mother in front of 300 witnesses." "That is an accurate summary." Henrik looked at her. He looked at the empty hall. He looked back at her. "I knelt," he said. "You did. In front of the entire pack. Yes. I am the king. You are. Kings do not traditionally kneel." "You did it very well," Iris said. "It was actually the most popular moment of the evening. Mrs. Calloway told me she cried." Mrs. Calloway's son brought back a baking dish. Also very well received. Henrik was quiet for a moment. Iris could feel his wolf, settled now, calmer, the frantic need to fix replaced by something steadier. He had gone to his mother. He had knelt. He had made a promise. The wolf part of him that had spent the entire speech trying to drag him out of his chair was, for the first time all evening, still. Not content exactly, more like a dog that has finally been allowed to lie at its person's feet after an hour of being told to stay. The relief was physical. His shoulders had dropped 2 inches. His scent had smoothed out. The sharp, anxious edge that had been building since his mother stood was gone, replaced by something warm and slightly sheepish, like a man who has just realized he spent 20 minutes fighting an instinct that was right the entire time. "I have invented a new pack tradition," Iris said. Henrik looked at her. "You have invented annual public humiliation." "Yes. You understand that every son and daughter in this territory will live in fear of this event." "Yes. You understand that I, the king, will also live in fear of this event." "Also yes." "And you want to do it again." "The pack has voted," Iris said. Henrik blinked. "When did the pack vote?" "Mrs. Crook organized a petition during dessert. I have it here." Iris reached into her binder. The binder still had some uses, and produced a sheet of paper. It was covered in signatures. 289 signatures in favor of making the Mother's Day Tribunal a permanent annual event. She got them in 45 minutes. 289. Bram signed it. Bram, my beta signed a petition to institutionalize his own annual public humiliation? He said, and I quote, "It's easier than arguing with my mother." Henrik stared at the petition. He stared at Iris. He stared at the empty hall. He looked for a moment like a man who is doing the math on the rest of his life and arriving at a number he did not expect. "I'm going to visit my mother this Sunday," he said. "That would be wise." "And every Sunday after." Also wise. "Because the alternative is the tribunal, yes." Henrik took a breath, let it out, nodded once, the way a king nods when he has accepted a new reality and is adjusting his strategy accordingly. "Your binder needs a new tab," he said. "I know," Iris said. She was already planning it. Purple, she thought, for traditions. "I know." The Mother's Day Tribunal is now an official Black Pine Pack event held annually on the second Saturday of May. Attendance is mandatory for all children over the age of 16. Mothers are encouraged, but not required, to prepare remarks. Most prepare remarks. Mrs. Crook has been appointed permanent chairwoman of the tribunal. She has a gavel. No one gave her a gavel. She acquired one independently. She uses it. Mothers' letters are answered more promptly throughout the territory. Sunday visits have increased by 300%. The postman has noticed a significant decrease in outgoing mail from Mrs. Crook's address and has privately expressed relief, as her previous volume of correspondence had been, in his words, accusatory. Henrik visits his mother every Sunday without fail. They have tea. She tells him about her garden. He tells her about the pack. Sometimes they sit in silence, which is also fine. He says it is easier than the alternative. His mother is delighted. Iris has a new binder. It is purple.